Morning, everyone. So just a little bit more about Autodesk here. For those that are on the call that may not be familiar with Autodesk, Autodesk is over a 3 billion company with close to 5 million subscriptions and obviously a quite a large employee base. And the reason I wanted to mention a little bit about Autodesk in this presentation is Upchain is new to the Autodesk product portfolio, and Upchain is a CAD system agnostic application, which we'll get into more details later in the presentation, but certainly there's the opportunity and possibility that people interested in Upchain are not traditional Autodesk customers. So the title of the webinar is Fast Lane to Improve Business and Data Processes, which essentially comes down to improving on some of the common challenges that companies face. Product development, there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot of opportunities for that to be hindered and have some challenges with that product development process. So, what are some of the challenges that your company is facing? This list here obviously is some common challenges, and maybe some of these resonate with you and your organization. Things like globalization, inadequate data sharing is certainly a common one. Manual efforts and repetitive tasks is another one that we hear from a lot of customers. Challenges with collaboration. And supply chain is a big issue in general for manufacturing organizations in the current world environment. So that's something we're hearing more of from our customer base too. In many computer systems, many business systems are built for the past and are kind of disconnected. And over the pandemic, certainly those limitations of computer current systems were really highlighted. Obviously, people working from home, more dispersed workforces and things of that nature. So obviously your company needs the ability to collaborate, and using different tools that are different, loosely defined workflows, loosely defined business processes, and in different locations, limit your ability to be effective in some of these areas. Data from multiple systems and different processes often end up in their own silos. Research has shown engineers, some of these stats here in the black box on the left. Research has given us these stats that engineers feel they're wasting up to 2 months a year looking for product data. The number of systems they have to interact with on a regular basis is around 10 within an organization, and a very high percentage of new product introductions miss their cost targets and launch dates. Companies can get on a platform though to bring everyone together and collaborate and improve on these things. What are the primary challenges that companies are facing, that lead to some of these problems? And it's distributed workforce. Again, we talked about that already. The pandemic certainly highlighted that as an even bigger challenge. Information overload. We have a lot of computer systems. We store a lot of information, a lot of data. But that makes it harder to filter through and get to the right pieces of information. Multiple sources of that data, and we talked about that a slide or two ago, where multiple sources of information and data end up, oftentimes becoming siloed. And then, of course, speed of change, trying to get things done faster, trying to execute processes and changes in a more timely manner. So the business impact, what is the business impact? Data management challenges cost businesses time and money. They also have a limit the amount of time engineers and designers can focus on innovation work. Really, it's forcing engineering staff to work only on what's absolutely necessary and not get enough time to work on the nice to do type projects, the design improvement and innovation level projects that are always in the queue. There's too much wasted time. Companies are wasting an average of 20% of their technical resources time on non-productive tasks. That's one workday a week. Some companies, are saying that they're wasting even more than that. And again, we mentioned this, but they're missing new product introduction targets, both from a cost and timeline perspective. 2/3 companies report that they're missing those targets by more than 5%. 1/3 missing those quality targets too. And that all results in loss of time and money. So the impact of all this stuff can be seen in three main areas. One area that this is seen and the impact is identified as in the data. So those that work with CAD files every day, it's really no surprise that finding the right information and wasting time searching for data is something that a lot of people talk to us about, and we see it in a lot of companies. I mean, almost about half of the people in studies are saying that. Struggling with basics of PDM, controlling, accessing, and sharing product data. Capturing and reusing engineering knowledge is an area where most people understand, that there's benefits in that, but it's not always being effectively addressed. Companies are struggling to identify, well, how do we address that? We know that there's benefits, in adequately capturing and reusing engineering knowledge and data, but how do we fix that? 31% of people are saying reusing data is a challenge. You end up creating new models from scratch every time, or new designs from scratch when there's information that can be reused and relied on and accessed. And then the last one there, the real big one of the real big ones, is working on wrong or outdated data. If you're not able to find and access the correct information and data, sometimes you work on the wrong and outdated information. That can lead to very serious consequences, obviously. I know I've experienced that in my career. We've done that a couple of times, and it's never a good thing when that happens. So has your company lost data? How did you deal with those losses? What was the cost of working on wrong, outdated data in your organization? And what steps has your organization done to prevent it from happening again? Do you feel you're doing an adequate job with your systems and processes in terms of identifying where to reuse data that you already have? What are engineering best practices, and have you been able to implement them? Second big impact area is people. Collaboration is a big part of the all business processes, but certainly the product development process. Almost half the companies are reporting in surveys that the collaboration among people is a significant challenge. Again, working on the wrong or outdated data because the collaboration between people is just not there. The collaboration between systems isn't there. And certainly collaboration and communication with people and entities outside of your company, customers or suppliers. How is that being managed in your company? Are you experiencing similar challenges in that sense? Wasted engineering productivity is one of the most common reasons companies begin considering, PDM and PLM systems. Again, we've talked about this, but engineering is wasting up to 20% of their time doing non-value-added work, activities, tasks. Is it easy for your engineering team to collaborate with departments outside of engineering and for sales and marketing, and also suppliers and maybe external design resources? And what's the impact of these collaboration challenges? Obviously slowing things down is one of the obvious ones, but how many errors and rework tasks are required, maybe by working on out-of-date data and things of that nature, because the communication collaboration isn't where it needs to be or where it could be. What's the value of all of that? Are there design reviews that are occurring regularly? How are those design reviews conducted? How are they reported? How are they tracked? Is it that easy to find the results of the design review for people that weren't available at that time or weren't direct participants? Are you getting the full value out of having staff located in different locations? I think you're getting the point, the people aspect of this, and then having a good system in place to better facilitate people communicating and collaborating together. I think a lot of organizations can benefit from. And then the third impact area is processes. How do you control your processes? PDM is more than just managing CAD files and helping people collaborate and work efficiently. Engineering workflow and processes centered around the data, such as managing change, design reviews, project management, bills and materials, all those things all those business processes that rely on the data is, a big area. And a lot of companies struggle with that. A lot of companies are doing a good job with the PDM side of things, but when it comes to the PLM side, the process side and managing change, we talk to a lot of customers who want to do better in those areas. And those business processes, those engineering processes are really essential. Compliance is another area. Understanding what requirements are in place, managing those requirements, recording that those requirements have been met, and having, lacking a defined process for this is a big challenge in managing that compliance as a result, determining what your compliance status even is at that point in time. So how do you manage and handle changes today and release process? Is that process efficient? And a big part of that often is, and what I've experienced and what we work with a lot of customers on when you talk about change processes is, the burden overwhelmingly falls on the engineering staff, but a lot of people ultimately participate in the change process. Certainly procurement, production, manufacturing, even sales, marketing. A lot of people are participants in the change process, but engineering has the burden to execute and also communicate that, largely because the data is in the CAD and the PDM systems, but the process, and there's no good process management in place. So having a process management in place, a PLM process in place that can help distribute that information, help manage that process across the whole organization, can really help. I know I've experienced that in my career where we were able to take that burden off of engineering and let engineering focus on just the design change aspect, but let the process management aspect be managed across the organization and put it in the hands of the people that have responsibility at that point in time, is a very, very significant benefit. Are you having, we mentioned compliance issues, are you having compliance issues, are you having problems with audits and things of that nature? Is it slowing down your product development process? So this is where, this leads us to, Upchain. Upchain can help solve these pain points. Upchain is an open out of the box and extensible software application. It works with pretty much all CAD data from all sources. It's independent of your CAD system. It brings together the whole value chain from different designers using different CAD systems. Lets you view the engineering data and whatever the source of the data is, whether in neutral format, and everybody can look at that. So people that aren't in the PDM system, the people that are not Inventor users or not Creo users can be participants and interact with the data in the system. You don't need to, engineering can stop creating screenshots and emailing those out and pushing information to people. It's not a push, kind of going back to what I was saying about engineering having the burden in a lot of cases to execute changes and execute new project introduction, design releases and things like that, and then push that information out and make sure that everybody's been informed when and how and what's been changed and why. Well, a system like Upchain can put that back to a pull situation so that people outside of engineering can get to the information they need, exposes it to the organization in a way that they have access to it, they can interact with it, they can understand what is going on with these processes and with the data. So whoever those stakeholders are and whatever department they're in, even if they're outside your organization, can again get access to that and use that information, interact with it. So that brings us to the platform. Upchain is an all-cloud PDM PLM platform. Connects the main areas that we talked about, data, people, and processes. It connects that all together. It makes it easier for the organization to collaborate and manage the product development process and all the areas identified in the slide. There's a lot of opportunities here. There's a lot that goes on in these different areas: new product introduction, bills of materials, change management, supplier management, quality management, those things, workflow and business process management, program and project management, and then of course the underlying data that goes into a lot of product development. The bulk of product development is the CAD data document management component. All of that is connected together. All of these areas have functionality within Upchain. It's all fully cloud-based, so rolling out to internal and external entities is incredibly simple. And Upchain provides functionality in these areas to really improve the process and data management in all of these areas. So you can go from an environment that is largely disconnected, different people in different departments in different locations, to an organization and a structure where people are, the different departments and the different locations and different people, internal and external, are collaborating in a more effective way. People know where the processes stand. They know what work is in the queue, how far along that work is, and when that work items are being completed, and why the work is being done, and certainly in the instance of change and things of that nature. So, data, people, and processes. The Upchain keeps the data at PDM, and the data is a core part of all the processes. It's in the center of the whole thing. And then bringing all the people in very easily and having a clear process management, control things and define where things are. So in summary, many systems are built for the past. They're not really well set up to do some of these things in the current world and working environment. There's a lot of desire from these companies to do better in these areas. And by putting the data and the processes in the cloud, it really makes these things easy to expand and roll out to the organization. So I have some videos here. We had some technical challenges at the beginning of this, and it revolved around getting these videos to play correctly within the webinar format that we're using today. So I'm going to try to talk through these the best I can. I'm probably have to mute these so that we don't get some weird audio effects like we were getting when we were doing some testing here. So I wanted to show you some of this software and what does the software look like. Like we just showed some PowerPoint slides here and talked about a bunch of topics and the fundamental premise of Upchain and what it can do for your organization. So what we focused on here in some of these slides and stuff was the engineering. First one would be engineering data management, assuming that a lot of people on the call are engineers or within the engineering organization at their companies, and the bulk of product development falls back to the engineering data and how are we managing and controlling that engineering data. Upchain has a plugin that's built for AutoCAD, Inventor, SolidWorks, Creo, NX. It works within those things, and from that aspect of the engineering data, the CAD aspect of the engineering data, it brings that in, and you can be using all of those things: AutoCAD, Inventor, SolidWorks, Creo, and NX in your organization. And we do have companies that are doing maybe not all of those, but we certainly have companies that are using AutoCAD, Inventor, and Creo or NX. They're using a mix of CAD applications from different divisions, different locations. It brings that all together. It works all on the same platform. And it's very easy to bring that stuff together to then ultimately, push out a bill of material, whether that's generated by an AutoCAD Inventor or just documents. Even we'll get into that in a little bit here too, documents and stuff. But engineering data management is an area that I think most people are interested in. How would something like Upchain work with the CAD-based data management? So I'm gonna have to turn off this audio, I think, so that it doesn't. So this is just going to be a video that plays and shows some of the interface here of Upchain and what it does. Again, like I mentioned, it's CAD-centric, cloud-based. It doesn't matter what CAD system you're using. It manages these different things. It has a single connector that plugs in and uses, for whether it's Inventor, SolidWorks, and that type of stuff. It's the same connector. No matter what CAD tool you're using, your users are using the same interface and the same connection to the system as a whole. I mentioned these things. It works with SolidWorks, CATIA, NX, Inventor, AutoCAD, Creo, all the main CAD applications it works with. So what we're looking at here is the connector, the plugin in the SolidWorks environment. From here, you can access your information data, and you can interact with the Upchain system and understand where the data is and where these processes stand. In this case, we're going to be getting some data out of the system. It does cache the data locally to improve performance. That's similar to a lot of on-premise PDM systems work too. So here, we're looking at now our structured assembly in Upchain and obviously in the CAD assembly environment too. You can check that data out. That locks it to the current user. It's very clearly highlighted with the lock icon, changing the color of the text. It informs the users that this has been checked out by that person. People are participating in this project. You can check that back in. This shows you the changes that have been made to the CAD data. It also shows you the corresponding changes. You can see on the left column is the CAD BOM, and then the right column is the engineering BOM. So Upchain works on fundamentally it works on a item-based concept with the data. So it puts the CAD files into an item, and then that makes it very easy to facilitate bill of material creation. Again, the experience is the same no matter what CAD application you're working with. And you can do a lot of the processes from directly within there and get your CAD data managed from a PDM perspective into Upchain. The next thing that goes into, oops, is that anymore? The next thing that goes into managing and releasing your products and defining your products is documents. And I think this is where I see a lot of room for improvement. A lot of companies are using PDM systems and doing a good job managing their CAD data. But there's often things like specification sheets, or they have a component such as powder coating, and they're not really maybe managing that part number, their powder coat part number, or they put a dummy CAD model in the system because that's how they're used to kind of getting the bill of material and managing that information. Well, having a document management component and implementing document management can be a real benefit too. So this is going to show you the. Let me turn that on. So this is what we're seeing here is looking at, I guess in this case, a Word document. It's very easy to bring Word documents in here. You can mark them up, highlight things, circle things, and that. This is in the visualizer format of the software. You can stamp things as it's showing. It's very easy to bring that data in here. Drag and drop technology to just do that. And it allows you to bring these types of things into the system and ultimately then add them into your bills of materials or whatever business process you're trying to manage. And here, what this is showing is the plugin, very similar for Office applications as it was for CAD applications. It's showing the controls on the right-hand side for Upchain. And that's directly connected into Word, so you can do most of your stuff from directly within the Word environment. And again, you can bring this in as a component of your bills of materials and your overall product release. And you can define part numbers and things like that. Items can be defined. You can add these documents to an item that contains CAD files. You can add those documents whatever way you want. And again, you can manage business processes with those CAD documents too. And briefly flashed across the screen. It wasn't up for very long, but there were work instructions and stuff like that. So training processes and things that, part of your release process where the design changed. So now the work instruction has to change. That can all be included in here. I think that's a challenge that a lot of companies face too. They do a good job with managing, revising the CAD files, but then there's resulting changes to things like work instructions for the manufacturing floor. And how are those changes and those necessary changes being rolled into your overall change management process? That's kind of stuff you can consider doing with Upchain. And the last video I want to show here too is, so we talked, we showed the engineering, the CAD file based changes and the CAD file based data management, and then the document based, the Office type document based information that can be put in there. Ultimately, all of that rolls up then into bill of material management and generating bills of materials. How do you generate bills of materials? And Upchain fundamentally works on the premise of an item-based system. Maybe people in the call might not be familiar with the term item. In the PTC world, in the windshield world, it's called windshield parts. So it's really, an item or a windshield part, or that concept of working is you have a part number, an item number, and you apply to that item number what defines it. And that can be a lot of things. That can be the 3D inventor model, its corresponding two-dimensional drawing, a PDF cut sheet of the materials that, that maybe the steel or whatever material is being used, and maybe another PDF cut sheet of the powder coating that ultimately gets applied to that part. So, when I rolled the PLM out to my last company, we had a lot of conversation around what is an item, and I basically described it as it's just a bucket. It's just the bucket, that's the part number, and then into that bucket you put everything that really defines that part. And we are very rapidly and largely it moved away from the world where an item or a part is defined by a single 2D drawing. It's often defined by a 2D drawing, a 3D model, some kind of specification sheet, and those types of things. And you can put all of that stuff in the bucket so that you can really truly define, fully, completely define your item. And then that item then gets put into a bill of material. And you can move away from the world where you have to put a dummy CAD model in your assembly to identify things like paint or grease or other parts of that nature. You can just put that part number in here, put the spec sheet or the image file or whatever it needs to define that part number and build your bill of material. So this is what the bill of material interface looks like, and this can be generated from a lot of different things. This example is showing some examples at the top here that are CAD-based, three-dimensional CAD-based models, and then this second section down, the camera PCB data. This is all generated by electrical design applications. So that's the other big thing here too. You know, I know a lot of companies struggle with this to roll up and generate and manage in a single clean environment data from different sources. You know, you have the three-dimensional design data here, you have the electrical design data here, and then you have some documentation that all rolls up ultimately into what this, in this example, the web camera design is, and what the full complete bill of material is in a single structured bill of material. You can expand and identify and know what's released, what's not released, what revisions are that, what does the part look like, you know, all that stuff. You can see the status column over here in the center, very clearly identifying if it's released or not. They're still in development. On the middle one here, this is locked because it must be out for editing. Somebody must have that checked out, so that's locked. You can visualize files, but it gives you a really nice interface to see everything that really truly goes into defining your product and its bill of material. And I click on that web camera over here, you can see more information on the right-hand side, some more details about that. In that case, that sub-assembly that rolls up into the top level bill of material. All of its components are shown here. And people that don't need to have CAD to interact with this in this way, really provides a powerful tool to expose the bill of material and what goes into the bill of material and its development to the entire organization without having to need a SolidWorks license or an inventor license to do so. We get into, you have your Upchain access and you can get into this, and you can see down here at the bottom documentation that might go into packaging information. Those are common areas where companies struggle to really effectively manage the bill of material. Those things need to go in the bill of material so the procurement and the inventory can be accounted for and things like that. But how do you, from a design standpoint, account for that, and what system do you put that in? You can view the drawings and models in the system. Again, you don't need to have the CAD application. You can very easily do some comparisons and reports on the bill of material. You can export that bill of material. Go back to that here in a second. You can export the bill of material to a different format. So you can get it out of the system if you need to get that in Excel, and either for manipulation purposes or to send off to somebody outside of Upchain for whatever reason. You can export that. You can import a bill of material from Excel too to generate a good starting point for a new design. If you already have it in a different system or something like that, you can put that in Excel and do it and import in Excel. And then visualization. So this has some really nice compare tools. So in this case, what we're doing is we're comparing this bill of material from two different versions. Obviously, designs change over time, but sometimes that's a little difficult to understand what changed. And in this interface here, this very clearly shows you what's changed from version to version. The green is things that have stayed the same. The red's been removed. The yellow is changed. Versions are changed some details about that. It really provides a very powerful tool. And then going back to some of the things we were talking about earlier in the presentation, making sure you're working with the right data, having engineers, giving the engineers and anybody in the organization the ability to understand how the design got to the point it got to, what changed over time and why. This very clearly shows you, certainly from a bill of material perspective, like what did change. And then, the associated change management that would go into this, that's directly tied in here. You can understand not just what changed, but why. I'm showing this is just a little bit of replay of what we were talking about here and comparing the bills of materials. Just waiting until it comes to the next step here because we can do what's going to come up here soon is the actual three-dimensional model comparison. So, and this is all part of the Upchain application. So you can see in here the changes to the three-dimensional details of the parts. And this is really nice. You don't need to be an engineer or designer to have access to this and to be able to understand, what changed. The whole organization can see this in a very clear format, what it used to be and what it is now. Obviously, this part had shifted up or down, dimensionally to make its design changes. You have capabilities built into Upchain here where you can explode these models, you can take cuts of these models, and don't need the CAD tool to do these things. This is all built in the software. And again, people can explode this and look at what makes up this model, what makes up the bill of material, what does it physically look like. And then if things come up during that investigation, just going to go back to that, things come up during that investigation, you can generate things like an investigation request. An investigation request could ultimately then lead to a change request or change notice. So, again, directly from within here, somebody that maybe isn't part of the engineering or is part of engineering sees that there's an issue potentially. Let's look at that. Let's do an investigation request. That initiates the process. It records the details around the process and embeds images directly from the system, and really fully documents what's being requested, why it's being requested, and then as it goes through its process, tracks the status of that, who's approved it, who's not approved it, who's provided commentary, who hasn't, and then the results of that investigation request may ultimately be a change notice, and a formal revision to the data, if you will, that type of thing. So, I wanted to show a little bit of what the software looked like and some of the things you can do. There is a lot to Upchain, and there's a lot you can do with Upchain. PDM alone is a big topic and something that can be discussed, but then you're talking, it has bill of material management, has supply chain management, change management, new project introduction, project management processes. It has all of that stuff built in. So this was really just, to give you an overview of what Upchain looks like, from the interface wise. I focused mainly on the engineering centric type functionality. So connected chain, what's the connected chain program? Connected chain program is included with Upchain. What it does, it enables, an efficient, effective way to implement and do user onboarding. It's an online go live program that users for about an hour and a half a day for a week receive training, and they learn about the software and can utilize Upchain and start getting into the system and go. Now that allows you to, again, get up and running from an initial standpoint, and allows you to use the software as it stands. And most companies are very successful at doing that. But you certainly can work with us to set up more processes, to set up more of it, to configure it more specifically for your needs if you'd like. But you can also do that stuff on your own. It's a pretty intuitive interface from an administration and configuration standpoint. But the main point here is the Upchain includes the connected chain program that allows you to onboard and get your resources up and running quickly. This is not a application that's intended to take weeks or months to get up and running and onboard at all. This is a quick to deploy. There's nothing to install really, very little to install other than the CAD plugins. That's about it. And it allows you to get up and running quickly and train your users quickly and start improving on all of the things and all the reasons we said that there's challenges and struggles and areas to improve. It allows you to start whittling away at that and start, getting to a better end state. So again, there is a lot to Upchain. This was just intended to give you a highlight, give you thoughts, get you thinking around. Do you have some of the challenges? Are there areas within your organization that could use some of the improvements that we've mentioned? And maybe consider Upchain as a possible method to start improving that. Again, it's really quick to deploy and roll out. It's fully cloud-based, so connecting your users, connecting the system, getting it up and running is incredibly fast and pretty straightforward. But if you want to talk more about how does the bill of material, the CAD BOM versus the engineering BOM, and how does that look, and I have these specific CAD applications, I want to one real big functional area of the software that we didn't show or highlight too much today was the supplier management. It's really good built in, and that can be really effective, especially for a cloud-based tool. Do you want your suppliers directly participating in the change process? You can do that. Do you want to, when things need to be updated, if there's supplier issues, how do you do that today? Probably a lot of companies still are doing, the whole, let's have engineering output a PDF and send it to procurement. Procurement emails it to their suppliers, that kind of thing. There's a lot more efficient ways to do that. So that's supply chain. Project management too. The whole Upchain system is premised on a project-based configuration and permissions setup. So, you start a new product introduction, you're going to release a new product portfolio, new line of products, you put the right people in there, the communication and their permissions and the workflow processes are all automatically assigned to those people, and it really allows you to do some really nice things within that front. And again, the bill of material management, CAD data management, all those other things. So hopefully this at least gave a basic overview of some things to think about. We are certainly here and available to answer questions and then set up more full interactive demos based on your circumstances and your particular interests and requests. That's what we're here for down the road.